Hello, welcome to the final of the Richardson lectures on river landscapes in the UK. This time we'll be looking at a specific example of flood management in Boscastle. We need to understand the reasons why Boscastle needed the flood management scheme, what strategies were used, and any issues caused by the implementation of this scheme. So while looking at Boscastle, well, it's important for us to know an example of a place which has implemented flood management strategies. Some exam questions may well ask you for a specific example. Boscastle suffered from terrible flooding back in 2004, and since then a range of flood management strategies have been implemented to try and reduce flood risk in the future. So where is Boscastle? Well, it's a village on the north coast of Cornwall in the southwest of England. So why did Boscastle need flood management? Well, back in the 16th of August 2004 it experienced this terrible flood event, and it was caused by a number of physical and human factors. The main one being that we had a period of very heavy rainfall, 75mm in just 2 hours, falling onto what was already saturated ground. So the ground couldn't take any more water, and instead that water, that heavy rainfall running over the land as surface runoff into the rivers. The village, even though it's close to the sea, is actually surrounded by very steep valleys in this part of the UK, channeling water into the rivers. And the local geology is also impermeable, shales and slates not allowing water to percolate into the rock, instead encouraging more overland flow. Some human factors then. The village itself has actually been built on a floodplain, so there's a human choice there to build on a floodplain, land that's vulnerable to flooding. The bridge in the village actually constricted the flow of water. Now this is something they have made amends to as part of the flood management scheme. The bridge was a low bridge through the relatively narrow river as it flowed through the village, and trees that had been uprooted further upstream were being carried downstream, got jammed under the bridge, and actually that increased flood damage in the centre of the village because the water was forced out of the channel much quicker and onto the surrounding land and into the village. And the channel capacity had also been reduced, narrowed, due to the development of a road and a car park in the village. And then something that sort of falls into both human and physical factors is the village itself is actually located near the confluence of two rivers, the Jordan and the Valencia. Now that's the confluence of river, where we've got two volumes of water flowing together. That is a natural feature, but obviously it was a choice, a human choice, to develop the village where it currently is. So the floods in 2004 actually caused many significant effects, and this is what's prompted the flood management. So some of the impacts were social. We had 50 cars destroyed, swept out to sea, damage to homes and businesses, many people left temporarily homeless. The church filled up with mud and water, but fortunately nobody was killed due to the responses with the emergency services. Economic impacts, huge financial costs due to the amount of damage done to buildings, loss of businesses, and loss of tourism. Tourism being a major industry in Cornwall and in Boscastle in particular. And as a result of the damage done, there's a significant impact on tourist numbers in the years following. And also some environmental effects. I already mentioned trees, lots of trees been uprooted out of gardens and the surrounding landscape. And actually a lot of coastal pollution. We are very close to the coast here. Debris in the floodwaters and the cars in particular, and the fuel that they're carrying, impacting negatively on the coastal habitat and therefore the wildlife. So now we'll take a look at what strategies have been used in Boscastle to reduce flood risk in the future. And this plan view map of the village has many of the strategies highlighted. Now some of these are classic hard engineering strategies, so we can see in several places we've got the river channel being widened. That's obviously increasing the capacity of the river there so it can hold more water. And a new flood wall has been built as well, so we've got these embankments increasing the capacity of the river channel. Now, I also mentioned the bridge earlier. The bridge in the village has been altered, it's been relocated further downstream, and actually the arch has been raised, its design has been improved to allow water and the debris to flow under it more easily to try and prevent that blockage situation occurring again in the future. We can also see that, and rather surprisingly, vegetation has actually been removed from close to the river. Now, In the last video we talked about planting trees, afforestation being a soft engineering strategy to reduce flooding. That does work very well in the upland areas, but actually if there's a risk of trees being knocked down by floodwater and therefore getting trapped in the river, they can increase the damage done through flood events. So actually the trees closest to the river have actually been cleared to prevent this blockage situation happening again in the future. We've also got a gauging station in the river to help monitor the water levels, the discharge, and give a better prediction of flood events. Another soft engineering strategy there, not actually going to do anything to reduce flooding, but by giving people more warning, can ensure that lives are saved and perhaps they can move some of their valuables to higher ground. And finally, we'll just mention the car parks. There has been amendments to the car parks. They've raised them up and developed them further away from the river itself, and some have actually had this coating of a kind of a reinforced grass surface to try and allow water to be infiltrated into the soil below. And whilst many people will praise the impacts of these flood management strategies in reducing the flood risk and damage in the future, there are also some issues caused by implementing such schemes. The hard engineering strategies don't often look very nice. They impact the character of the village. And that's important because Boscastle being a tourist village may lead to a reduction of tourist numbers in the future. A lot of the hard engineering schemes used are very expensive, so there's a high economic cost associated with a scheme like this. And the removal of trees close to the river is actually going to lead to problems with disruption to local habitats, and the same can be said for any of the changes made to the river, the widening of the channel, impacting on wildlife that may be living on the riverbed. And finally, we'll take a look at some exam questions. This is one we actually looked at last time because it actually features the map of Boscastle. The question though itself does not refer to Boscastle, doesn't ask for an example to be used, but Boscastle itself has actually appeared as a question. But we won't talk about this one today, we did that in the last video. So here's a question we could expect. We haven't seen any specific questions requiring an example yet, but it could look something like this. Using an example you've studied, explain how flood management strategies can reduce flood risk. And this one's a 6-mark question. So of course we need to refer to a specific example. It's great if you've got the knowledge of flood management strategies and you can pick up many marks here, probably up to 4. But in order to get those top marks, we must do all parts of the question and refer to a specific example. So clear reference to a specific example, in this case Boscastle, ideally with some background to it, so perhaps you could comment on the fact that it was impacted by severe flooding in August 2004, hence why it needed the flood management scheme. And clear explanation of 2 or 3 flood management strategies and how they work. Now ideally they'll be specific to Boscastle, such as things like the removal of trees close to the river, the raising of the arch bridge, widening and deepening of the river channel. It wouldn't be wise here to refer to things like dams and reservoirs because they're not relevant to this specific example. Okay, thanks for watching.